The terms fan wank and a love letter to fans of the franchise basically mean the same thing, but are usually differentiated depending on how much of a fan you are, how often the particular franchise does them, and how cynical you are about it at this point in its lifetime. As a massive Black Mirror fanboy, and uncynical about it, in spite of my misgivings about evidence that the show's been starting to rely a bit too much on its principal formula over experimentation in episodes like Crocodile, and given Black Mirror doesn't do fan service that often and it's not exactly that self-indulgent, I can let it slide and call Black Museum a love letter to fans of the show. Also, the fan service in Black Museum isn't really as centric to it as many reviews I've read of this thing have claimed. I'd actually argue it makes a fair bit of sense to entrench that Black Mirror's technology exists within the same universe. While yes, Black Museum does kind of fall back on retreads of transferring people's consciousness into technology that we've seen already in stuff like White Christmas and San Junipero, for one thing, not every idea in Black Mirror can be the most unique and original thing ever, and for another, a fair bit of technological developments in the real world are interlinked. An idea for something has always sprung from somewhere. Just like in the arts, no one's really that original, we're all the sum of our influences, and it makes a lot of sense to see these fictional technological innovators taking elements of what we've seen before and reshaping them into something a little bit different. I can see a purpose for Black Museum on that front. However, it's not exactly as deep or trying to say as much that's new with its recombobulations of past Black Mirror concepts into the 3 short stories contained within its framing device, and I do see why this one suffered a fair bit of criticism. I do like the framing device a lot. The museum conceit works really well with this one because it's got a real Tales from the Crypt theme park ride-like vibe to it, complete with the cheesy host. Parts of it are a bit more openly silly and over the top than most Black Mirror, but as I've mentioned throughout these videos, I quite like the variety that comes with an anthology series, and it's cool to have elements of it that are a bit less bleak and dour than usual and more fun and B-movie-ish. However, I have to admit that the 3 stories contained within it do work together a bit less cohesively than the previous anthology-style episode consisting of 3 interwoven stories and a framing device, White Christmas. Pain Addict's the one that kinda sticks out like a sore thumb. While it is Black Mirror done as a gory B-movie and fits with the haunted house theme park ride vibe the episode was going for, after it's finished at about the 25-minute mark, the rest of the episode feels a bit underwhelming when you've started out by hitting us with something this gory, over the top and in your face. This is not to say I didn't love the shit out of Pain Addict. In fact, I would have preferred the whole episode be composed of stories like it. Yes, it's gross, silly, incredibly dark, disturbing and graphic, and precisely the sort of Black Mirror idea I'd expect to come from Penn Jillette, but as those of you who've watched my class videos can tell, that is kinda my thing, so it was pretty much built for someone like me.
Now, if we have 16 human teeth and we take away 5 human teeth, how many do we have left?
As much as I enjoyed it though, it's almost too gory and over the top when you set it alongside the more emotional and family-centric story that follows it, which while I did like that a lot as well, it's just a bit jarring going from one to the other like this. Pain Addict's less character-focused. It's more of a comic booky experiment in a gimmick than the more down-to-earth exploration of technology's emotional impact that follows it. It's striking and it makes a real impact, but getting you to feel anything other than horror and revulsion isn't exactly its main goal, and that's why while it fits within the framing device really well, and you are guaranteed to remember this story for better or worse, it feels a bit out of place alongside the following story. It's weird, I like all the singular elements of Black Museum, and they do work really well inside this framework, but it's the way the elements are all sandwiched right next to each other that's a bit jarring, watching them play out back to back in one 69-minute sitting. This may sound like a bit of a weird suggestion, but maybe it would have been cool if there was an entire series of Black Mirror set within this framing device. Just one series, just to try it. We open on the museum, and over the course of 6 installments, the proprietor tells the visitor a story of a bit of dark and flawed technology from the near future. Because as said, I like this framing device a lot, but a 69-minute experiment with such an idea makes the stories feel a bit blunt and compacted, and less meaningful than Black Mirror usually is. I also do like what I'm going to refer to from here on as the monkey story in spite of its flaws. I kind of understand why they felt the need to fold this idea into the Black Museum episode, because if done as a long form one, you could accuse it of being a bit reliant on Black Mirror's usual bit of technology seems good, seems like it solves a problem, turns out it doesn't formula. That, and it's about reuniting a partner with an essentially deceased loved one, and if it were done as a full episode, it would be living in the shadow of Be Right Back. And given how fucking astonishing Be Right Back is, that's not somewhere that any bit of media should want to be. The monkey story's pretty well suited to being a small and simple adaptation of the phrase familiarity breeds contempt. It's an articulate demonstration of Black Mirror's more delicate and emotional side, with a gloomy and morose, but arguably obvious as all hell, moral to the story. Yeah, it's nothing new, and the primary impetus for it being made appears to be the lunacy of the image of a dead woman's consciousness being trapped inside a stuffed monkey, and whose only means of interacting with the world are two set phrases that either mean happy or sad. And it did make me burst out laughing when the guy's new girlfriend takes it outside to shout at it. It's a ridiculous image with dark and emotionally devastating undercurrents that's also pretty believable and realistic, in spite of it being an intrinsically stupid idea. I love the design of the chamber that her consciousness is trapped in as well. The buttons on the armrests with simple labels make it almost look like it could be an Apple product. Again, while it's silly, if it were actually feasible, I could easily imagine a tech company thinking this was a good idea without considering the knock-on effects. So, therefore, I think the monkey story does its job pretty well. While it's not really anything outstanding in the canon of Black Mirror, and wasn't as emotionally resonant as previous iterations of human consciousness uploaded to machines like San Junipero, it was primarily the visual design that made this worth it for me. The final story of a convicted murderer who signed away his post-life consciousness to become a museum attraction where you get to torture him was a decent idea and fits well in the theme park haunted house vibe, and it probably fits alongside Pain Addict a bit more aptly than the monkey story did, but all in all it felt like a bit of an afterthought to me. The monkey story fleshes out its characters a bit more than the tortured hologram, and Pain Addict was more directly and visually sickening than this was, so it's kind of underwhelming by comparison in both regards. While it was clever in how it folded the torture story back into the framing device, completing the circle, it didn't quite make as much of an impact as the rest of it. That, and I could kind of see the revelation of why this lady was at the Black Museum in the first place coming. It's kinda clever how we have the proprietor telling the story and then she cuts him off to spin the story into something different and add context. So while I wasn't as struck on this story as the rest of it, I wouldn't go as far as to call it a bad idea. Overall, I did enjoy Black Museum a lot. It's a bit more noticeably flawed than most of Black Mirror, and it is lacking in certain elements that have made previous installments these big emotional gut punches that made the show famous, but it's still more solid than most sci-fi dramas. I think some of the criticism this one's had may have partly been because Black Mirror is usually so strong that the flaws in certain episodes have been magnified by comparison. In any other show, while Black Museum would never be considered a classic, I don't really think it would have raised as many eyebrows as it did as an installment of Black Mirror.